Rapper YNW Melly back in court today for his trial.
Investigators say Melly shot Thomas and Williams inside of the Jeep Compass and then tried covering it up by staging a drive-by shooting. But the state's final witness, the lead detective on the case, said they found no evidence of a drive-by where Melly claimed it had gone down. Instead, he said they found evidence of a cover-up.
The first injury to the head, what's it?
Back
of the head was the fatal injury. Right?
So in this case, that's the fatal injury because the other two, he was dead when they were inflicted.
So,
1, Melly changed his clothes. 2, the position of where Melly was in the car. Because the T-Mobile puts Melly at the scene.
Ayo squad, what's the drill? Back with another video, man. The second week of the YNW Melly double homie trial ended with an intricate look into the rapper's text messages around the time of the 2018 incident he's being accused of carrying out. According to a lot of law practitioners and commentators, that week wasn't the best for the prosecution. Things were looking bleak for them while Melly and his defense team were seen having a field day. Believe me when I tell you, week 3 looked a lot different and the defense won't be filmed laughing again anytime soon. In addition to that, week 4 is set to be just as eventful with the jury planning a site visit, testimonies from other people close to Melly and the YNW collective, and more damning text messages from Melly's mobile. So today, we break down the latest in the trial, day by day, and give you the real on how ish is looking for Melly and his co-D. So without further ado, let's skip the play and get down to business. Day 8 of the infamous trial started with Detective Danny Polo as he continues his testimony for the prosecution about Melly's alleged gang ties. Last week, there was an issue about Polo wearing a mask while testifying. His reason was the fact that he feared for his life as an undercover agent, but Melly's legal team pushed back and requested the detective remove his mask while talking to the jury. Judge John Murphy III finally agreed and ordered Polo to remove his mask for the remainder of his appearance in court. This is good news considering the last week, it was exposed that the agent's identity was already compromised due to his wife having their family picture in her Cash App profile. Also, one of the jurors expressed that the mask irritated her anxiety and PTSD, yet nothing was done about it at that moment. Back to the text messages. The jury was shown messages between YNW Melly and other alleged gang members, and Polo concluded that based on the text, Melly was being recruited by multiple G-Shine Blood gang members to get down. Young Thug, Jules Santana, and French Montana's names were brought up in court as being referenced in text messages about their gang affiliations. Polo also testified that he believes Trippie Redd and Fredo Bang are gang members as well. By associating Melly with these alleged celebrity gang members, the prosecution can play on that with the jury's preconceived notions about gangs in hopes that they look at Melly with the same lens and not think twice about finding him guilty.
Why is there even a gang expert involved in this case? Why is that important? Well, it is important because the gang expert is part of the reason they're asking for the death penalty. The death penalty in this case is imposed because the allegation is that it's a crime committed for the benefit of a gang.
YNW Melly's We All Shine album cover was also presented as evidence. Detective Polo testified that the phrase, "You shine, I shine, we shine" on the back of Melly's jacket on the cover is a credo used by the G-Shine Bloods. Polo also concluded that YNW itself is not a collective gang but made up of gang members. Detective Danny was also then cross-examined by the defense attorney as they tried to debunk the narrative that Melly is banging. In fact, Polo testified the entire day of the trial, so the prosecution must have really felt he was of importance. Apparently, they believe that the gang association can make or break their case. Day 9 began on Tuesday, June 27th with the continuation of the cross-examination of Polo, who's been on the stand since day 7. As the prosecution's gang expert, the state has been using Polo's expertise to try and prove Melly's gang ties and how much they played into the assassination of Juvie and Sack Chaser. YNW Melly is said to have messaged somebody, "No regret for the ish that I did," which is a line from the Louisiana rapper Kevin Gates' song 4:30 p.m. The prosecution claimed that this is a connection to the incident. Melly's attorney, David A. Howard, asked Polo about the line. Polo was again asked about an altercation that went down between the YNW camp and Young Boys camp in the months leading up to that morbid night. Who knows where they could be going with that, though. Next, Dr. Rebecca McDougal, who was tasked with determining the manner of the demise of the two rappers, took the stand. Her testimony included over 100 photos of the deceased rappers that were used to determine the matter of their demise on the autopsy reports. She ended her testimony by concluding that Sack Chaser was hit before and after he lost his life, appearing to corroborate the state's claims that Juvie and Sack Chaser were shot and taken out, and then a drive-by was later staged to try and cover up the crime. However, McDougal later testified she could not determine the distance from whence the shooting occurred or if there was more than one shooter.
So I called the range of fire on this case indeterminate, okay?
Either way, this was a pretty nice move from the prosecution. After McDougal left the stand, Associate Medical Examiner Dr. Adrian Sauter took the stand for the state. She performed the autopsy of YNW Juvie. In her opinion, he was shot at close range between 3 inches and 3 feet. In an eyebrow-raising revelation, Dr. Sauter revealed Juvie arrived without any clothes.
No.
Did you examine his clothes?
He came unclothed to our office.
Oh man, that's really crazy for real. It is unclear if she was referring to the hospital or the medical examiner's office. This is when things started to take an interesting turn. The prosecution has been cooking since this week started for real. The day ended with a close of Sauter's testimony. Day 10 began on Wednesday, June 29th, with the testimony of Sergeant Christopher Williams. A shooting reconstruction expert examined the Jeep Compass vehicle where the incident went down. According to Local 10 News, Sergeant Williams said that his investigation concluded that Juvie and Sack Chaser were hit from inside the vehicle by one person in one strap.
From the driver's side back seat.
As to the shot that killed Christopher Thomas, where did that shot emanate from?
Driver's side back seat.
Okay. Is it possible for there to have been 2 shooters inside that car?
No.
Why not?
When Assistant State Attorney Kristen Bradley questioned Sergeant Williams, he explained how he estimated the trajectory of bullets fired into and out of the gray colored Jeep Compass they were riding in.
What are you demonstrating in this photo?
This is a demonstrative photo that would show if an individual was seated in the rear passenger seat behind the driver, would be able to obtain a shot into the front seat passenger.
Yeah, that's pretty big news right there. I bet you Melly's armpits turned into waterfalls on that one. Heavy news, yo. On the night of the October 2018 incident, YNW Portland-born Bortland Henry, who was the driver of the vehicle, told a Miramar detective that they were the targets of a drive-by in Broward County, Florida. My determination was that it was not a drive-by shooting, Sergeant Williams told the jury.
My determination was that this is not a drive-by shooting, and it's based upon this picture here, which is a very good picture to describe it. All of these rounds are done, and all but one is done at a stationary position.
Williams testified that Juvie, real name Christopher Thomas Jr., was hit in the head at close range on the face from the left in the middle of his cheek while he was facing forward. He also added that he was already deceased when he was shot multiple times as he was crumbling with each round, according to the reconstruction. Part of the wound had an abrasion ring on it, Sergeant Williams explained about the entrance wound. That's painful to hear as an onlooker. One can only imagine what it's like to hear something like that as one of the family. They gotta be all in our prayers, bruh, for real. As for Sack Chaser, real name Anthony Williams, he was shot at close range according to Sergeant Williams' testimony, and Williams also testified that the driver's back was firmly pressed against the seat during the shots of Juvie and Sack Chaser. He added that Juvie was taken by surprise by the shooting as evidenced in his defensive left hand thumb laceration according to the reconstruction. When Bradley asked Williams, was it possible that YNW Bortland fired the shots, he responded he would have had to have an arm like Inspector Gadget. He would clarify that it would be impossible for the driver to shoot Juvie in the back seat. Williams testified that Melly was sitting in the rear back seat according to personal knowledge. Man, oh man, oh man. It's really real now. Really real. After lunch recess, the defense attorney David A. Howard was able to cross-examine Williams and question the analysis of his reconstruction of the crime scene. Their engagement was described as a tug-of-war match as Sergeant Williams appeared confident with his assessment of the crime scene while correcting Howard's constant inquiries. Bruh was really ready for whatever, huh, man? Sergeant Williams reportedly told the jury the shooting happened from somebody inside the car. Blood evidence shows that the shooting happened inside the car. Angles show the shooting happened inside the car. The suggestion of it happening outside, I wouldn't entertain it.
The shooting happened from somebody inside the car. The blood evidence shows that it happened from inside the car. The angles show that it happened from inside the car. So any suggestion of it happening outside of the car, I would not entertain, because it's not possible.
Uh-oh, shots fired. I'm not entertaining all your scenarios, Howard reportedly said during his cross-examination of Sergeant Williams. He had to have been in his feelings when he said that, for sure. Later on the stand, Williams testified that it could have been both YNW Melly and YNW Bortland who shot from the outside of the Jeep, saying, "It looks to me that the person was directly in front of this car at the bumper when he or she fired into the car. That is how I determined my math was correct." He then said that the vehicle was moving when the shots were fired. The defense might be able to use this to their benefit, maybe. According to designated law and crime journalist Bryson Paul, Melly has been keeping his performative gestures in the courtroom down to a minimum. After these past few days, who can blame him? He probably should have done that from the beginning, honestly. Day 11 hit on Thursday, June 29th, with the prosecution continuing their redirect of Sergeant Christopher Williams, the man who has done more for the prosecution than the prosecutors themselves. After the prosecution finished their redirect of Williams, the mother of YNW Juvie took the stand. God bless her, man. During her testimony, Juvie's mom, Leandra Phillips, identified her son as one of the people seen in the surveillance footage from outside of the New Era recording studio in Fort Lauderdale.
Are you related to one of the deceased in this case?
Yes, I am.
How so?
I'm his mother.
And who is that?
Christopher Thomas.
Who's that in that photograph?
Christopher Thomas, my son.
The jury watched as Melly, Juvie, Sack Chaser, and Bortland all left the studio on the day of the double homie. Assistant State Attorney Kristen Bradley said that the video recorded before the incident in the early morning of October 26, 2018 shows Melly getting into the left rear seat of the Jeep vehicle while Sack Chaser was in the front passenger seat and Juvie was in the right rear seat. Bradley asked Phillips to identify her son. The four YNW rappers left the studio together at about 3:20 a.m. Bortland, who was the driver of the car, would later show up at Memorial Hospital in Miramar, Florida, with the two bodies at about 4:30 a.m. Also, the prosecution counted all 529 photos to prove that it was Melly's phone that was pinged that night. Among the rappers included in the 500-plus photos were Kanye West, Kodak Black, Fredo Bang, J. Cole, Trina, Lil Uzi Vert, T. Grizzly, Young Thug, and the late rapper P&B Rock. At first glance, this would appear as something that was inconsequential, but doubling down on Melly's ownership of the phone could serve to be quite damning in the long run. Stay tuned, folks. During the day, it was also announced that the jury will go on a site visit to the forensic garage and look at the bullet-riddled Jeep Compass vehicle that everything went down in. It was believed that the jury would most likely take a view of the vehicle when they came back from a week-long break on July 10th, 2013, and after security measures were implemented. After a week-long recess, the YNW Melly trial resumed on June 10th. There wasn't any documented mention of said site visit, but nevertheless, Day 12 began with prosecutors bringing Trevion Glass to the stand. Glass testified that he knew YNW Juvie and Sack Chaser for several years and was working on beats at the New Era recording studio in Fort Lauderdale before the crime occurred.
Right. And do you recall who took you from the hospital to Freedom's house?
Same person.
All right.
Glass told the jury that on the morbid night, the YNW Collective booked a 12-hour session, but others were getting sleepy, so they called it a night and left earlier than planned. Glass left the studio in a red Mitsubishi with 3 other people to YNW Melly's house where they fell asleep. Glass testified that he was awakened by several phone calls, and when he learned of the shooting, he and others rushed to the hospital. After receiving the tragic news that Juvie and Sack Chaser were gone, he went on to Fredo Bang's home where he saw Melly.
Was Melly wearing the same clothes or different clothes than when you saw him at the studio?
It was a new day. Nah, he wasn't.
Nah, he wasn't You guys
Wasn't wearing the same clothes.
Okay.
He wasn't wearing the same clothes, Glass said, adding that the rapper was wearing shorts. Local 10 News reports that prosecutors also displayed messages from Glass's Facebook account to Melly from that day. According to Glass, he was trying to find out more about what happened. Glass also testified that he had watched some of Melly's trial on his phone before his testimony on Monday. In a bizarre moment, Travion Glass was caught texting and talking on the phone during a courtroom recess. Fortunately, the jury was not in the courtroom at the time. The defense brought it to the attention of the judge, who then questioned Glass about his text messaging and phone conversation while on the witness stand. Glass told Judge Murphy that he was talking to his brother and they were not discussing the trial. Next, the prosecution called Miramar Police Department lead detective Matt Moretti to the stand. Moretti spoke on initially getting the case and speaking on the mothers of YNW Juvie and YNW Melly at the hospital the morning of the incident, and says he was taken aback when Bortland told him the location of the shooting. Moretti also testified about Snapchat messages sent from YNW Melly to his former girlfriend Mariah Hamilton. The messages got way too many errors for me to try to read fully, but I can tell you that the gist is basically that he acknowledges that Bortland did some of the realest stuff that he ever felt in his life by being down for him and doing what he had to do.
Because if the crackers come grab him,
The prosecution again attempted to prove their theory that Fredo Bang picked up Melly from the crime scene. Detective Moretti read a message from Fredo to Melly on the morning of the incident that reads, Miramar, Florida 33029, I'm on my way right now, blood. The trial ended for the day with the beginning of Moretti's cross-examination, and that's where my coverage stops for now. Melly's defense maintains that the two rappers were taken out in a drive-by, while prosecutors allege that it was Melly who shot the two men. With each week that goes by, the defense is beginning to look a bit more Swiss cheesy, but trials are usually a marathon and not a race, so we just gonna have to see how things play out. Things are turning up for both sides of this fight, where each week is a round in the match. Week 3 saw several haymakers from the prosecution, while the defense, well, played defense and bob and weaved. However, for the first time in the trial, the bruising and swelling are starting to be visible and appear to hinder their ability to counter. Will they have the endurance and stamina to keep the fight interesting? We're gonna have to wait and see. Until then, stay smart, stay alert, and stay real. I'm out, y'all.